Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Shop Talk, hosted by the Triangle Area SQL Server Users Group. So with me tonight, we have, there we go. Now we have 100% of Mike Christensen. Previously, we had about 84% of Mike Christensen, but now we've got 100%. So welcome in, Mike.
Welcome. I'm actually coming to you live from my Vision Pro. I'm actually inside of it. It's hard to tell, but
yeah. You don't
welcome,
look
everybody.
nearly annoying enough to be wearing a Vision Pro. So I don't know. I don't know if I believe you. Press X to doubt. And Mala is still on her Vision quest, and Tracy has yet to storm the castle. So hopefully they'll be back in later episodes, and we'll hear all about the epic tales and adventures that they have experienced along the way. In the meantime, it's Monday. It's after work if you're on the East Coast, and we're kicking back just a little bit. We're talking about topics of a technical nature, maybe even some SQL Server-ish stuff. Probably gonna do some derailing. Okay, definitely gonna do some derailing. That is the norm for this show. Actually, I should just call them alternate rails, and that way, even if you're spinning around, you're really just kind of working off of a rail. That's what we'll say. So we're going to work off of some rails tonight. Check your servers if you're running Defender, more of a RAM hog than usual. Thank you for the PSA, Anders. No, I'm not going to rant about Microsoft Defender. It is a perfectly adequate solution to a problem. Not like Todd Howard, perfectly balanced in every way, but it's more like GM products. They're perfectly adequate products, if you get my drift. All right. However, I do want to start off, talk a little bit about a more than adequate event. SQL Saturday Atlanta BI edition kicked off. It was Saturday, and it was a good event. Good to be there. A lot of people, good folks. Got to see actually even a couple people in the Triangle area who made their way down. I won't do any name shout outs because I don't want to forget anybody and have death threats or people throwing bricks through my windows. The whole point is for me to throw bricks through their windows, not the other way around. I beat your sorry Mazda with a GM product. I don't actually have a Mazda anymore, Anders. Spoilers. We may actually talk a little bit about that, depending on how far I get down the feature, the docket tonight. May actually talk about that a little bit, but SQL Saturday Atlanta, good setup, very well done. Damu and company did a great job of it, and sort of kicked off the year for these events. There are several SQL Saturdays that are upcoming, so I can start the screen sharing process. I did at the time, and I would happily have another Miata if I had the room in my garage. I absolutely would have another Miata. But anyhow, SQL Saturdays. The SQL Saturday website, in case you are unfamiliar with it, is SQLSaturday.com. If you're unfamiliar with the concept of SQL Saturdays, these are free one-day training events that mostly take place on Saturday. One of the sessions at SQL Saturday Atlanta BI Edition, I have to specify that because as you can see on the screen, there is another SQL Saturday Atlanta that is coming up in April. That is totally different from SQL Saturday Atlanta BI Edition. Different people, different set of sessions. It will actually be at the same venue this year, but usually it's at a different venue even. Anyhow, one of the sessions was about data visualization, and the guy who did the session, his name is Kevin. It wasn't me, by the way. And there were a lot of Kevins at that conference. There was a lot of failover Kevin instances. So if 3 or 4 of us failed over, then there would still be some kicking around. So we had that going for us. And his data set was SQL Saturday events. I was hoping it would get to speakers, the people who've spoken at SQL Saturday events, so that I could be like, yeah, that's my name, way up there at the top. I think at this point I'm number one in terms of number of SQL Saturdays spoken at. I'm definitely at least number two. I just it depends on where you start the data set, where and how much information you have on the really early events. Nonetheless, SQL Saturdays, Austin, Salt Lake City will not be there. Joinville, South Africa, not going to make it there, unfortunately. Atlanta, we'll see, hopefully. Jacksonville, I'll be down in Jacksonville for sure. Baton Rouge just posted, so you can see that there's a few that are coming up on the schedule. And you might ask, hey, what about Raleigh, Durham? And I would say, not this year. The best time for us to host a SQL Saturday is actually right around this area. And there's no time to do it. It's usually about a 4 to 6 month process to get everything spun up. When we were doing this on an annual basis, I could get, meaning the people I delegated to, could get this stuff rolled together in, 45 days. 30 to 45 days for most of it. The trickiest parts would actually be some of the logistics around venue selection, making sure that everything was set up appropriately, if we needed to order shirts or order anything else, and fundraising. Fundraising took a lot of time. We had Tom Norman, who did a great job of fundraising for several years, and he has moved on to a better life, by which I mean he moved to Texas. Not that I phrased it anyway else. But, Tom won't be around to make phone calls for us. And now event spaces are tough. Yeah, event spaces have gotten to be really tough. Mark Gordon, friend of the group, Mark Gordon, who may or may not be in chat tonight, but he has been trying to make some inroads with one of the major universities in the area. There are 3 of them, by the way, so you've got a 1 in 3 chance of getting it correct. And he's trying to sort something out, but the places that we've historically hosted our SQL Saturdays at just weren't interested. Doug Purnell has offered up Elon University for this. He's made mention that, hey, I can do this. The only problem is Elon is a lot distant for most people. It'd be a good hour and a half drive. So
I just went there to a game because my buddy has passes.
Right.
It is a lot further than I remembered.
Yeah. It's a
little spoiled because I don't drive a lot, but it was far.
Oh yeah. If you're on, say, the west side of Durham, it's probably about a 1 hour drive for you. It's probably closer to about 75-minute drive for me. And then if you're talking somebody in Raleigh or Wake Forest or Nightdale, that may be hour and a half to 2 hours. So that's the unfortunate part. It's great looking campus. Doug is great people. And it's a little too far, unfortunately. You could practice French and Haiti and Spanish at Carthage, but Cartago. I have to note that Cartago, Carthage must be destroyed, however. Now, this is actually in Costa Rica, which now I kind of want to go. It's been a while since I've been to a SQL Saturday in Costa Rica.
Can you believe it?
That's a bad pun.
Thank you.
Nonetheless, SQL Saturdays, go check them out. They're good stuff. We won't have one in our area. However, I will also note some of them are on the list. Richmond, I don't know if it's going to be May 27th. They may actually have a different date. But Richmond, Virginia will have a SQL Saturday in either May or June. And so that's a 2.5 hour drive for us. So that's probably one of the closer ones that you'll find in the area. Jacksonville is a great one to go to. It's perfect weather this in May for Jacksonville. So I do highly recommend that one. That's a bit of a drive as well, but 5-6 hours maybe. Atlanta, probably also stretching on a drive. I don't know if Charlotte's going to have one this year. If they do, it's usually a good place. For other places in the Southeast, we often don't get many others in this region. I go to Jacksonville. I might have to stop by HQ, though. Well, now it's a business trip. Now you can write it off. All right. That was SQL Saturday. I just wanted to give my after action report. Oh, by the way, there are also Data Saturdays and other events. Data Saturday Phoenix is March 23rd. I will be there. And there are some other events. Data Kaylee, if you have a chance to go there, it's hosted at Trinity University. So you can say that you were a speaker at Trinity. And it's in Dublin, Ireland. And also great time of the year. It's 2 of the 3 days when it's sunny in Ireland. And yeah, all good. As Anders mentioned, Data Saturday Gothenburg and Denmark are the same day, so probably can't speak at both. I have no idea if you could figure out a way to do the transportation between those effectively, but I won't be going to either one of them, so I guess them's the breaks. While we're talking about, hey, what's upcoming, let's talk about upcoming TriPass meetings. If it's in CPH, might be doable if it's a morning one. Yeah, maybe. I guess it would depend on how quickly you could get from the airport to the venue. That actually reminds me, Thomas Grosser has talked in the past about trying to set up SQL Saturday New York City and Philadelphia on the same day and just having 2 buses going in opposite directions and saying, okay, you speak in New York City in the morning, take the bus, you go down to Philadelphia at lunchtime for the afternoon sessions. You speak in Philadelphia in the morning, take the bus, go to New York City for the afternoon sessions, and you would give your session twice, once to the people in New York, once to the people in Philadelphia, which is a really cool idea. Who knows if it'll ever get pulled off? Yeah, if anybody could figure out the queue problem with it, that would be him. And it could just be a sub-selection of speakers where we're going to have 12 speakers, the first 2 tracks of the day. You'll speak here in the morning, there in the afternoon, and then do the swap. And then the people who don't want to go to the other city would take the sessions maybe before lunch and after lunch. You could figure this out. It could work. It would be a really cool and crazy idea, and I could see him pulling it off. Nonetheless, TriPass meetings, upcoming meetings. In case you did not know, tomorrow we have Hugo Cornelis, who's talking to us about debugging without the debugger, and that's looking good. On the 20th, this one's going to be in person. Matt Gordon will be talking to us about cloud migration. So that one's going to be in person only. It will not be online. It will not be recorded. And the third one, Eugene Meidinger, has a session. He's going to talk about the math behind large language models. There's a debugger in SQL. There's a debugger in SSMS. And when people took it out, took it behind the shed and put it out of its misery, apparently there were a lot of people who complained about this. How dare you? How dare you get rid of a bad product? I used that bad product. I'm like, well, stop using it. It's bad. But people don't like to hear that very much. Let me see. I know I got to find Eugene in here because speaking of Eugene, here we go. Yeah, Eugene Meidinger has gone indie. He is now producing his own content and has a training course. So I have a link on Curated SQL, and I'm using Curated SQL specifically because Eugene was nonplussed at the idea of me saying, well, hey, look, throw some money at Eugene, specifically put the money into a cannon in the form of pennies, put it into a cannon, blast it at him, and then tell him I sent you. And I mean, what you have to realize is pennies can't accelerate that much. So you just wear a heavy coat and they'll just bounce right off of you. It's no big deal. He requested that we don't. However, I am pushing heavily in favor of coinage blunderbusses. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about with the coinage blunderbuss, I gotta see if I have to see if I can find this. There was a presentation at DerbyCon. It was an amazing presentation, and the presenter talked about all of the things that you could do, the things that you could craft after you got past the TSA screening. So using just whatever you can buy at the Sky Mall and whatever lounge stores you have, this is how you can do things. At one point, he made a tube out of a magazine, and I forget exactly what he used to lacquer it up to make it a sturdy tube, but tubes out of magazines. He used
the inside of combos.
Maybe I think he used some liquid, or like nail polish or something, to lacquer it up, so that it was firmer, and used some other materials. I remember things like the Axe body spray, the spray bottles, that's flammable. The spray agent is also something that you could use as a propellant. Batteries that are, the lithium ion batteries, so they can be ignited. And he created, he didn't demonstrate in person, but he showed enough of the contents. Like, if you do this and this, and I'm not going to show you step 3, but here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 5. I'm not going to show you 3 or 4, but step 5 is, this is an explosive that I could create out of contents that are just in the store after TSA. At one point, he created a proper blunderbuss. He created you load it up actually with pennies, and it was a magazine tube. There were a lot of rubber bands involved. I remember that much. And then I think it was using an Axe body spray can as the propellant for launching the pennies. And this was something that would hurt a person. It would probably leave some welts if you did not wear a heavy coat. And look, it's winter. Eugene lives in Pittsburgh. He's going to wear a heavy coat. I don't see what the problem is. Basically, what I'm getting at is launch pennies Eugene's way. Give him lots of pennies, and you can get his course. It is unteachable, and this is how you end up on the no-fly list. So the guy who gave the presentation at DerbyCon mentioned that he was working with the TSA, talking to them about all of these different things. And this talk was a good 12 years ago, I think. It had to be a while ago, because I can't remember exactly which year it was. It was one of the earlier years, and DerbyCon's been down for a little while. That's a sad story, but basically that was an outstanding presentation. I loved that presentation, and that's what I thought of. That, yeah, I think launching coinage at people we like should be a common practice. And that's what I'm getting at. So essentially, I'm calling, this is my call to action. Launch coinage at Eugene and tell him I sent you. So, okay, that's TriPass speakers. We got Hugo tomorrow. We got Matt Gordon next week. We got Eugene the week after that. If you want to listen to me speak more, I actually am presenting tonight for the Data Platform Down Under group, where it is already tomorrow. So it'll be 9:15 p.m. Eastern time, which is just a few hours from now, which means that I can't wear pajamas yet. But if you are interested in it, this is a presentation I give approaching zero. It's minimizing downtime during deployments. Which one did you say is only in person? Not the one tomorrow, but the one next week.
Cloud. Yeah, cloud.
Matt Gordon talking about cloud migrations. The other two are online only. So the in-person only will be at Tech Systems, their new office. By the way, you haven't been there yet. It is a really nice looking office. That's a really beautiful place to show up to once a month instead of having to go there every day. But great looking lobby, nice conference room. Just looks very good. Type of place that I would definitely want to go once a month.
4300 Edwards Mill Road.
Yes. So that's the new location. It is. I can come back here and 4300 Edwards Mill Road. Yeah, that is a long way to drive. Yeah, I get you. I get you. So, nonetheless, you can attend tomorrow. You can attend a couple weeks from now online only. And if you want to check out this talk tonight, Data Platform Down Under, Warwick Rudd runs it out of Melbourne. So check that out. He's got good people who usually coming in. I can't remember how frequently they meet, but they do every 2 weeks. So they've got quite a bit going on. All right. That was the shilling part of today's program. Now for the not shilling, but seems like it should be shilling. And that is, at the end of the last episode, we had somebody asking about, hey, can you tell me about HYCU and Azure Backup? And I said, I will look into this and we'll talk about it the next episode of Shop Talk, which was my polite way of saying, I have no idea what you're talking about. I need to Google this so that I don't sound like an idiot. And I did some Googling. So now we can talk about the results of Googling and also might get me to rant a little bit about how bad most backup solutions are. I'm not going to say anything about this solution because I haven't tried it. I don't know really much of anything about it, just from the documentation. But it's basically backup as a service for different clouds and products. They do have... I'm going to go straight to the user guides because the website is marketing fluff. And the Azure service, as you dig into here, what you learn about pretty quickly is for their Azure service, this is backing up virtual machines. So they are setting up policies in Windows. It sounds like this is built either on top of or very similar to Azure Backup, where Azure Backup is the ability to back up virtual machines in Azure. Perhaps this is a better user interface or it's something that organizations that are used to this product will have more fun with. I'm not sure. I'm not at all familiar with the product. I've not used it before. I am not a sysadmin. Sysadmins oftentimes slam the door when they see me coming by. Sometimes they put out signs that say, no, I'm out to lunch. And then I'll knock on the door because it's glass and I'll be like, I can still see you. And then they turn off the light and try to stay really still, thinking that maybe I'm like a T-Rex and I sense motion. And that may actually be true. I don't know. But when it comes to HYCU for Azure, this does look like it is a virtual machine backup tool. And if you're using this for SQL Server instances, well, they'd have to be virtual machines. So SQL Server in Azure as a virtual machine. And I always have, here's my common problem with backup solutions in general. And I know there are cases like Pure Storage where they can do quiescence and very consistent backup and recovery. The problem is with a lot of these products that they're either slow or don't backup and restore appropriately, or run a higher risk of losing data than using native backup in SQL Server. SQL Server has very good backup capabilities. If you compare it, if you're looking at, here's Postgres, MySQL, Oracle, SQL Server, comparing how do I back up a database for each one of those, Postgres has like 45 different ways to do it, 44 of which suck. MySQL, the way to back up the database, I think, is you hire an intern to type out each of the columns. I kind of joke about that, but basically, if your backup policy is essentially write files out to CSV, I don't consider that a good backup. Maybe I am spoiled. Maybe I believe in the mysticism of a binary file being totally different from a bunch of CSVs, but I don't know. I just don't see a bunch of CSVs as my way of backing things up as a solid plan long term. And with SQL Server, we do have full differential and transaction log backups, so we can take point in time and get point in time recovery. VSS Writer, yeah, the Volume Shadow Service Writer is usually something that I turn off just to turn it off. Prior to SQL Server 2022 and some of the new stuff that Pure Storage is doing around backups, VSS Writer sucks. It still sucks, but the new way that they do snapshots doesn't, as I recall, it doesn't use VSS Writer anymore. This is probably where somebody like Anthony Nocentino or Andy Yoon would come in and tell me exactly how it works and sanity check and correct me when I inevitably get something wrong, because I don't deal in backups anymore. But my understanding is that it doesn't use the VSS Writer at this point for brand new SQL Server and their solution. I use SentryOne to monitor if it gets turned back on. That's a good idea. That is a good idea. And not just that service, really any service. If you don't know when your services are being turned on and off, then that's a good thing to set. Some services are going to be turned on and off. They're scheduled to turn on and turn off. Some services, you will find applications regularly turn them back on and off. And so there may be a little bit of noise, but you can pretty quickly figure out what is my current state, what is my desired state, and what are the differences between those states, especially when we are talking about services, Windows services, or even Linux services, and track those differences. If you see differences, then the question becomes, well, why? Like Anders mentioned, hey, it could be a Windows patch that turned it back on. It could be a sysadmin turned it on. It could be a malicious piece of software turned it on. Windows patches might be malicious pieces of software, depending on how you define malicious. But whatever the reason may be, at least you have some information that tells you at this point in time it was off, at this point in time it's on. Or vice versa, what turned this thing off? What turned my reporting services off? That is a good thing to do as a sysadmin, and you can rig something up pretty easily. If you have SentryOne, obviously Anders is monitoring it that way. Even if you don't, have a PowerShell script that gets all your active Windows services, and then when it's done, write that out to a file, have that be your gold standard, and every once in a while, every hour or two or once a day or something, go run that same script. Get your results, compare it to your gold standard. What differences do you have? Do you have a new service that just popped up? That could be some new Windows piece of software that installed and now has a new service entry. But if you didn't expect a new service, this at least gives you an opportunity to investigate. So that turns out to be pretty solid in terms of tracking. And let me grab the PowerShell to get service status. It's just get service. That's what I thought it was. So I will drop this in the IT bros. Immediately trustworthy. Immediately trustworthy. Nonetheless, get service, and you can get the service list. It'll tell you as well, is this service active? Is it not active? What's the status of it? And then write that out to file. So here we've got status, name, and display name. That may be all that you need. Take it, write it out, and then compare it to what things look like tomorrow at this time or at 3 a.m. And that may assist you in doing some sort of analysis. And by the way, if you do want to dig in more to HYCU for Azure, here's the user guide. Again, I'm not going to trash the software, mostly because I haven't used it and don't really know much about it. I will say, if you're using virtual machines, if you're storing things, backing up using virtual machines, it might be a good product. I would also just point you toward Azure Backup and say, well, you could just simply use Azure Backup. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. Perhaps their marketing people, their salespeople would be able to tell you why their product is so much more awesome than Azure Backup. But from my initial look at this, it feels like this is like a wrapper for Azure Backup. It feels like it's not doing a whole lot of new stuff. Basically, it's taking snapshots of VMs and writing them into Azure Blob Storage. So, I don't know. They do have their data protection for Enterprise Clouds product, which I think on page 119 or so, they have this restoring SQL Server databases. So for this product, maybe more flexibility with retention. That maybe. And if so, that could be a viable reason why you'd pay them extra money for backups. So again, I don't intend to knock the product too hard. For non-databases, I think the Azure Backup process is pretty solid. Even for databases, it's okay if you don't need the data, which you might be saying to yourself, wait a minute, why would I have a database where I don't need the data? And what I mean by that is, if I'm using SQL Server and I have actual backups of SQL Server, using managed backup or rolling your own with Minionware or Ola's solution or whatever, one of my clients uses managed backups as well. It works pretty well. And you can have all of the backups written out to that blob storage container. But if your server fails, that's where the Azure Backup of your VM can come into play. Where, okay, let's restore it. And those databases, they may or may not be fully consistent. They may or may not have all of the transactions already quiesced. That's okay. I'm going to restore backups on that machine and make sure that I'm able to bring this server back up and running. So it does work. We do both, but it excludes data drives. And I think that's perfectly fair. I would say if you're in a situation where the server falls over and you need to build up a new server, this is where I think having both makes a lot of sense, because you don't have to try to reinstall SQL Server, reconfigure the machines, and install any other software that needs to happen, remove software that you don't need from the Azure VM template, all that fun stuff, and then restore your backups to that machine. And it is possible to stand up a new server. I mean, it's also possible to stand it up faster if you have everything pre-configured. If you have all your PowerShell scripts in a row and you need to do this 8 times a day, then Sure, it'll be faster as well. You could even build out the VM templates and deploy VM templates. But if that's something you don't need to do very often, like, hey, I've got 12 servers total, and I simply need to make sure that my servers are running, and if one fails, build it back up without having to spend a whole weekend doing it, then this is a perfectly reasonable solution. For this product, HYCU, they do have something on restoring SQL Server databases using their enterprise product, and they do mention point-in-time restore if the database recovery model is set. So my guess is that they are probably using the SQL Server backup database commands under the covers to make those database backups versus using VSS. However, again, I don't know the details of the product, and as a result, I can only speculate based off of what the documentation here says. And from my quick reading of it, it does look like it is taking the BAK and TRN backups, the full and transaction log backups, when it runs versus creating VSS copies. So to that extent, it may be a perfectly reasonable system. It's not one I'm familiar with. It's not one that I'm going to go beg somebody to be able to use. I actually appreciate that I don't have to think about backups, at least of SQL Server instances. There are other people who do that, and I get to use them versus having to manage them. But if you do have to manage them, yeah, maybe this product would work. They haven't paid me enough money to say things positive about them, so if you want me to say things positive about your company, sponsor us. No, I can't say I wouldn't take the money, but I also can't say I wouldn't take the money and then crap talk the product. All right, speaking of crap talking products, what have you got, Mike?
I don't have anything.
Good. We have no products to bash. All right.
We haven't been buying a lot of products, I'll tell you that. I was just looking them up, so it looks like they're kind of a startup. They've been around since 2018.
Gotcha.
And they have some venture capital funding.
Yeah. All right. I am going to do a little product bashing. This one's going to be light bashing. It won't be heavy bashing.
Gentle bashing.
This is a gentle bash. And the reason it's a gentle bash is because of the fact that they very clearly indicate this is preview. And then it's important, this feature is in preview. And they even have, what does preview mean? Preview means don't use this in production. May have limited or restricted functionality. This is the one I'm going to call out. So I'm working with a customer about Git integration, and specifically Microsoft Fabric, doing a proof of concept of Microsoft Fabric, and one of their questions was about CI/CD. So Teams is still in preview. Teams will be in preview forever. It'll be like Gmail, where Gmail was in preview for a good decade. Teams will inevitably be in preview because of how awful Teams is. All right. Who owns Git? Who gets owned?
You made that on that podcast. You made that joke like, I wonder who owns Git. I wonder why it's not integrated.
Oh, that's GitHub.
Oh, excuse me.
Which, yes, that will be part of. I don't. Well, now that you've done the
I
joke,
ruined the joke.
it's okay. I wasn't thinking of doing the joke, but who owns Git is a consortium, I believe. Nonetheless, Microsoft Fabric, Git integration. Let me scroll down. Considerations and limitations. That's where I'm looking for. only Git in Azure repos is supported. Azure DevOps. Specifically, not Azure DevOps on-prem, just Azure DevOps in the cloud. That one, minor annoyance, but not a huge one. Sovereign clouds, not supported. So, okay, FedGov, not supported. Country clouds may or may not be supported. But I don't have to worry about any of those, so it doesn't bother me very much. No, the problem is only Git in Azure DevOps is supported. So if you're using GitHub, to Mike's point, well, can you use Git integration? No. And why not? I don't know. I'm guessing because they only had the time to do it for one and they picked Azure DevOps instead of GitHub, which is interesting considering the last couple of years of GitHub is the future, go away from Azure DevOps, go to GitHub. And then the policy kind of seemed to have shifted to, they're both perfectly good products. Maybe you should use Azure DevOps. Or you should use GitHub. You can use both. They're fine. And we seem to be currently in one of those you can use both, it's fine phases, which means that next year it's going to be everybody should use GitHub and GitHub only, and Azure DevOps will go away. And then the year after that will be, both products are fine.
Use GitLab.
GitLab is a totally different story, and GitLab is okay as long as you never connect it to the internet. There have been several major vulnerabilities around GitLab that are scary bad. But yeah, this is my rant. Please support the GitHubs. I expect at some point GitHub will be supported here. And probably, if I were to take a wild guess, this is all part of lifecycle management with Microsoft Fabric. And lifecycle management includes source control, Git integration, and also the other side is deployment pipelines. Well, the deployment pipelines are Azure DevOps. They're Azure DevOps pipelines, which would explain why Azure DevOps is required. GitHub has GitHub Actions, which are very similar to Azure DevOps pipelines. And so perhaps they wanted to start with the pipelines instead of GitHub Actions. Maybe it was easier for their audiences or easier to work with or something. Whatever that reason may be, it is kind of annoying that source control currently, there are some major limits around what you can and cannot include in source control. Like one of the stories around Fabric is you have many different ways to solve a problem. You can solve the problem using notebooks, using pipelines, which are basically data factory, using data flows, Gen 2, which is essentially Power Query for Fabric. But 3 different ways of solving these problems. Well, only one of those ways is supported for source control at this point. Notebooks is definitely, this is definitely the the Animal Farm. All animals are equal, but some are more equal than others, where notebooks are more equal than the others. And we see that in source control. We see that in pipelines. We see that in many situations where, oh, yeah, we'll offer you these options, but you should just use the one. I hope there will be support for pipelines for data flows Gen 2 in terms of source control, in terms of deployment, this whole lifecycle management thing. Again, realizing that the word here of preview is relevant and they are actively working on it. Hopefully my rant will be short-lived in its level of meaningfulness, and will eventually go away, I don't know, sometime. I will point out that, speaking of conferences, there is a Microsoft Fabric conference, community conference, that is coming up in Las Vegas in March. And I'll just pull up the link right there. We're not watching any videos, but It is coming up March 26th through the 28th. I'm going to guess, considering the people who are presenting at this conference, I'm going to guess that there will be some announcements around Microsoft Fabric at the Microsoft Fabric Community Conference on March 26th through the 28th. I don't know what any of those announcements would be, but wild speculation that there's going to be something. There's going to be something that they'll say, this is coming out, or we have a new update on this thing. There is a Microsoft Fabric roadmap, which is available at that link. And you can see what they have on the roadmap. I will note, first, that the roadmap hasn't been updated in a couple of months. Secondly, that they don't have anything about GitHub in any of the roadmap items that I could see. So who knows if they're going to have GitHub support anytime soon. But, we can see, all right, Q1, Q4, Q1, Q3, some of this stuff has shipped. And I would expect that some of this will be pushed out, will be some among the announcements. Also, Microsoft, let's see. It's probably going to be Build will be the next one up. I don't think there are any conferences between the Fabric conference and Build that are big Microsoft conferences as opposed to third-party conferences. This is 2023 stuff, so we don't have, I don't know that they have they don't have the 2024 announcements yet for Build. So I actually don't know when the dates are for Build 2024, except that on February 5th, there's this XDA developers article about build dates have leaked online, and it's scheduled for May 21st through the 23rd, which is pretty much the same as last year. Last year it was in mid to late May. So, we may see in May some more announcements for Fabric. Again, I have no official answers. I have no unofficial answers either. Even if I had unofficial answers, you definitely wouldn't be getting them on Shop Talk. I know I'm smarter than that. Not by a whole lot, by a little bit. And let's go back to TriPass. That way I'll have something up. And our quick reminder of tomorrow's session with Hugo. If you have not signed up for tomorrow's session with Hugo, let me drop the link in chat right now. Be worth signing up. Get to listen to Hugo talking about some nice stuff. Figuring out what's in the table spool or the index spool. And Mike is hard out on that, and that's fair. That's fair.
Do they even have a real spool anymore? Or am I thinking of a spindle?
No, spools are still there.
It's like a hard drive. Yeah.
Yes. No, spindles. Yeah, spindles are more of a hard drive thing. Spooling. I love the way that Eric Darling explains spooling, which is SQL Server's passive-aggressive way of telling you need an index. It's like, what would be really good for making this query better is an index. If only I had an index. Instead, I'll have to make my own index, and it's throwing you a guilt trip. That's what the spool is. But basically, it's a way of temporarily storing data so that you don't have to recalculate this information for every go in a nested loop operation, which can be better than the alternative. But usually when you see spools, especially in poorly performing queries, one of the easiest bits of advice is let's try to remove that spool. That may or may not be the root cause of your performance problem, but it's usually a contributing factor. All right. We've got about 10 minutes left. And I'm out of topic, so I'm I'm going to throw out something that is tech related, but is totally unrelated to database stuff. That is OpenPilot. So I was mentioning with Anders, I sadly got rid of the Miata. I do miss the Miata. I love that car. I would absolutely, if I had a third garage bay, I definitely would have a Miata in that third bay. But traded it in, got something else, and it's a Hyundai product, and it has assisted driving. Its assisted driving is fine on highways, not great on regular roads. And that's why he did what I did, convinced the wife to get a minivan so I could get the vet. Okay, in all seriousness, I tried to get my wife to test drive. We ended up with a Ioniq 5. I tried to get her to test drive it so that she would love it and trade in her car so I could keep the Miata and we would have the Ioniq that, both of us could drive around sometimes. She refused to test drive it because she saw through my plan and basically said, if you want the car that badly, you know what you have to do. And so she was a cynical player in that occasion. She still hasn't driven it, which I don't know. But that's okay, because now it's my car and she can't drive it now. So, it all worked out in the end. But OpenPilot, in case you're not familiar with it, OpenPilot is actually open source automated driver assist. It is technically considered level 2 driver assist, meaning you are the driver. You are still in charge of your vehicle. If your vehicle goes careening off the road or slams into something, it's your fault because this is driver assist. This is, if you think of things like cruise control, even the more advanced forms of cruise control that can track how far the next car is ahead of you and can slow down and even stop, or lane assist that will try to keep you within your lane, those sorts of things are assists. They are not intended to be replacements for a human paying attention to the road. And so George Hotz is the guy behind, one of the people behind Comma, which is a company that produces a product, which when you look at it, it's basically, this is a cell phone with extra cameras. But it is a product that will allow you to use OpenPilot, where you can get really, in what I've experienced, outside of windy, twisty country roads, this works extremely well for keeping you within the lane, keeping navigation, and it's not great at actually making the turns, but it can make the turns. So some people have much better experience with it. And if you're into this, you can tweak all of the values. So you can tweak just how much torque is allowed, how much the wheel spin is allowed. So it's Midwest driving survival equipment. Absolutely. I have done the trip from Durham to Eastern Virginia a couple of times, and that trip is about 95% straight line. It's straight line northeast. You get off at a junction, you go straight east the rest of the way. It is amazing at that. It just get it and go, stay in your lane, keep behind other people, and life is good. I have played around with it. I actually have one of the forks of OpenPilot that is more for Hyundai vehicles, and it's a really cool product. This one I am willing to shill, even though I dropped all the money on it. So the thing is, though, it will depend on your vehicle. Basically, it won't provide any new functionality that your stock vehicle can't do. So if you're like, they have a list of cars. Yeah, I looked into it for the Volt, but there were no good pre-made kits. Actually, depending on the Volt, this is the older volt, it looks like. And it does allow for adaptive cruise control. You can use OpenPilot for it, and it will start at 0 miles per hour, but no lane control below 7 miles per hour. Yeah, a couple years back, one thing to note, they just released a new product, the Comma 3X, which is what I have. And previously, you needed some extra hardware to get installed, a red panda, and a couple other bits. Those things were actually integrated into the hardware device. So now it's just one cell phone looking thing that is like a dash cam that you set up and controls the rest of the way. So my Ioniq 5 2024, by the way, is supported because I have it. Basically, OpenPilot's available. I get everything controlled, and here's what I needed to get for it. Then setup is okay. It can be a little painful. It is most certainly, this is a hobbyist tool. This is not something that I would give to my parents and say, hey, go set this thing up, you'll be fine. Because especially for a car that's not officially supported, you may have to fingerprint the car, where you're grabbing from the ride, you'll grab a JSON fingerprint of the mechanisms in the car, what's available, what the settings are, what the current allowable values are, and then you might need to create a fork of this OpenPilot repository, make your modifications, and deploy that locally, or create a pull request to get the fingerprint into their master set. And they don't automatically accept pull requests. This is, as you would expect, hey, they're vehicles. We're talking about something where you don't want changes willy-nilly. But really cool product, and I do recommend, if you have a new car that has adaptive cruise control and lane centering, this can work pretty well. Also, if you put it into experimental mode. So it's got a couple of modes. One mode, which is basically fancy adaptive lane control and adaptive cruise control. Lane assist, cruise control. In addition to that, there is an experimental mode that will track red lights and stop signs. For red lights, it's hit or miss. And actually, this is one of my complaints about the experimental mode, where when you're at a red light or you're coming up to a red light, if there's a car that's stopped, it'll stop. No big deal. It catches the car. It's like, oh, I got to stop. If you're the first one in the line, it may stop or it may keep going. And the problem is it also likes to brake kind of hard. So you're waiting, like, are you going to catch the red light? Are you going to catch the red light, or do I have to slam on the brakes? Guess I had to slam on the brakes this time. With stop signs, it does a California roll, which means you go up to the stop sign, you get down to 5 miles an hour, and then you peel out. Because, well, these are based off of neural networks that are built on training data, and the training data is mostly people in California who apparently drive like that. So
it's the California stop setting.
Yep, it's a California roll, or rolling stop.
Yeah, roll. That's it.
Yep. So yeah, it's not going to replace your ability to drive at all. One of the funny things, though, the rest of the world calls that a yield sign. Something like that. So one of the funny things, my Hyundai, one of the reasons I got OpenPilot, when you turn on lane centering and adaptive cruise control, it requires you to nudge the wheel. So you actually have to be holding onto the wheel, and not just holding onto the wheel, but you actually have to have a little bit of jitter. If you don't jitter at all, then it will start beeping at you and saying, hey, put your hands on the steering wheel. And so during my drive, I would have my hand loosely on the wheel, but I'm not jittering. And it's like, no, put your hands on the wheel. And I'm thinking, okay, officer, come on. With OpenPilot, they have a neural network trained on body behaviors. So there is an infrared camera that points back toward the driver. And if you are looking forward, or you're in a situation where you're looking aware, then the vehicle is fine. If you start looking down at your cell phone, or you're digging through the center console, or gawking out the window, it will beep at you and will say, hey, pay attention. So when you're actually driving, you're just cruising and okay, nothing's going on here. I don't need my hands on the wheel, gently juggling it so that it indicates that yes, a human is still moving this thing. It works pretty well. So I'm going to keep messing around with OpenPilot. Got the device, done some long drives, done some short drives. There are areas where I think it could be improved, and I'm interested to see where this goes in the future. For legal reasons, they've already said they're not going to level 3, where level 3 is where you start getting automated driving. And I think level 4 is fully automated driving. But they're going to stick to level 2 because level 2 means they don't get sued when you crash. Level 3, they get sued when you crash because they're saying we're going to control these things. And as soon as the manufacturer says they're going to control it, they're now legally liable. Which is, I think, why I don't know that we're going to see automated cars anytime soon. Fully automated cars on a large scale. You see some. People have demo cars. There are some commuter buses. Of course, it is open source. Yeah, it is open source, but the company, AI, manufactures a product. And so and the product is the thing that's taking control. The software is how they're taking control. But what it's doing is it's intercepting the signals that would normally go to the adaptive cruise control or lane centering programs in the vehicle. It's intercepting those signals and telling the CAN bus, hey, perform some other action instead. So anyhow, cool stuff. Interested to see how it shapes out in the future. I've enjoyed it so far. My wife does not trust it, but I think that's fair. I trust it.
Well, it is written in Python.
Oh, I do trust it a little less now. No,
It's 33% C++ and 60% Python.
Yep. But all right, we're going to wrap up this episode for tonight. Glad to have everyone here. Glad you could make it, Mike.
Thank you. Yep, thank you. Appreciate it.
Of course. And if you do want to check out the Data Platform Down Under group, I do have the link up in chat a little bit higher. Check me out in a couple hours. I'll be hopefully up and at 'em for it. So until we see each other, maybe tomorrow when Hugo presents for TriPass, our advanced DBA group. Until we see each other in the future, everyone, take care.